Hello and welcome to Screen Time. Today I'm going to be reviewing Appan. It's a Malayalam movie co-written and directed by Maju. And it's his debutant movie. Like, this is a fairly excellent debut, if I may say so myself. The movie is a very gripping drama about the darkness of domesticity, about the darkness of villages, and kind of the worst of masculinity that one can witness, in families, in villages, in social spaces. It's also the tale of fathers and sons. There are two sets of relationships. You have the grandfather in the family, the father, and then there's a baby son, there's a kid. And these three men kind of have these very complicated links throughout the film. And it really, I don't know, for me, I feel like this has been the freshest, most gripping portrayal of masculinity we have seen in Malayalam, like after a long time, right? The movie starts off with this opening sequence where we keep hearing about, we're introduced to this family in a rubber totem, and we're keeping on hearing about this one character who supposedly is not liked by everybody. They're waiting for him to die. There's all of these multiple parallels that are like running across conversation. But we don't see this character. And that's beautiful because you see it from the perspective of the mother in the family, the daughter-in-law in the family, the son, the grandson. They're all talking about Appan, Appachan, Appan. And where is he? Who is he? And that's kind of the crux of the film. We get introduced to him, and he is the most utterly vile, irritatingly, like painfully horrendous person that we have seen on screen in a long time. And he reminds me of so many men that I've heard of over the cross of like our Kerala history. Multiple of these patriarchs who are just dirty and rampant and borderline criminal in the way they deal with the people in their life, be it their offspring, be it their partners, be it the society, whoever. And that character has been played so wonderfully by Alencier Lopez. And he does it with so much ease that it's really confusing. At certain points, he becomes this character, this monster of a person who, while he's laughing, he's cackling, and while he's, throwing out the most abusive of words and singing very loudly in the middle of the night, it feels like these dangerous sort of ploys. A song that he sings in one sequence while everybody's trying to sleep, it almost seems like a war cry because he's just trying to provide sleepless nights for his family. The movie so beautifully addresses the case of generational trauma and how trauma kind of gets passed on whether you like it or not. And so in multiple subtle points, you hear our main protagonist, Sunny Wayne's character. He's a tender man. He is a weak, so-called weak person, and he's trying very hard to stand up against his situation, but at multiple points he just wants to crawl up, and he keeps repeating "Enike maduthu" at multiple points in the film, and you see it. You see how somebody becomes like that. Somebody is made to be like that. There's one particular point where his mother mentions that his father would tie a rubber band around his appendage, and these moments where you see that he was abused as a child, or that when he was younger, he was, stripped naked in the village circle by, the town people because of his father's reputation. You see how generational abuse and childhood abuse can lead to a man being so tender and fragile and sad, like he's depressed. He's a depressed protagonist. And you feel really sorry for him at multiple points. His wife provides a pretty strong pillar. There are wonderful sequences of tenderness between them where she's kind of, cradling him on her shoulder while he's crying over his fate. And then you come down to the son's character, like the Sunny Wayne's son, who is a young boy who he's trying so desperately to protect from their situation. The young boy is maybe about 5 or 6 years old. He's just going about his day, living his life. He's got a little dog. He's enjoying playing with water and doing all of this like child things, while there is this very violent plot afoot in his backdrop. And his father, Sunny Wayne, is trying so hard to protect his son from all that's happened, because his father, Alencier's character, never protected him from his own abuse. Coming back to the character of Itti, our central patriarch and the central pain of this film, he really embodies all the evil in the world. And Alencier Lopez kind of becomes this man who is a sadist, who is just cruel, who really doesn't seem to have a lot of moral code governing his actions. And I don't know, I feel like this character needed to exist because it reminds me of multiple patriarchs we've seen in Malayalam movies, but this kind of becomes a crescendo. Because at no point are they glorifying or hero-fying any of his actions. He is the absolute scum of the earth, and it's very clearly pronounced in the film. And right across that is Sunny Vane's character, who is a tender man, who is trying as hard to be a good person, unlike his father, but then his father and his situation is pushing him to extents where he is lifting up rods and trying to strangle people. And that condition is very upsetting to watch. It's very, it gave me a lot of anxiety and kind of like just a bad feeling in the pit of your stomach. And the rubber totem sequences, the utter silences in the movie. And when there is music, there is this sort of drum beat that comes up, which really adds to this anxiety. It makes you feel even more sick at the condition of this family, at the condition of somebody who has to live with a man like this, a man like our villain, Itti. The relationship between Ananya's character and her mother-in-law is very pivotal in the film because it's these two women who kind of form the crux of, they show us the desperation of the family. They show us the kind of state of the family. Ananya's character kind of plays this pillar of strength for her mother-in-law and stands up for her whenever her father-in-law becomes a menace, and for her husband and for her son. And she's really there as this like soldier. The mother-in-law is played by Pauly Valsan so beautifully because she's the embodiment of everything desperate, of sadness, of anger, of helplessness. And she's really reached that breaking point. At one point, she actually says, "Enikku rest edukanam, enikku marikkanam," type of conversation comes up because she's genuinely reached that point where there's really no reason to, keep on living. But she keeps living. She keeps fighting for the sake of her son and for the sake of her son's family. So the women here, both Ananya's character and Pauly Valsan's character, become these pillars of resilience around which Sunny Vane's character, Nunya, can kind of balance his life on. He, at points where he feels like he's fragile and going to break, he turns to his mother and his wife, and they become this trio that kind of, pushes the narrative forward. And at one point, they even decide to leave the house because, they kind of stick together. That is the family within the family. Now, in the middle of all of this, I feel like these two women kind of provide one look into femininity. And then there are a bunch of other women in the film, which I loved. I love that we have, kind of questionable characters who provide entertainment to our Itti, Alencier's character. And they kind of come and go at multiple points in the film. They represent a certain section of village life, and they play it so beautifully. It's nice to acknowledge that there are different kinds of women, and they're not all these pillars of, goodness and whatever. It's nice to see shades of grey played out by the women in the film as well. And the kind of most pivotal grey woman in the film is the character of Sheila, played very well by Radhika Radhakrishnan. I think this is her first film, and she has done a really good job kind of embodying this, I don't even know what the word is, because I don't think we've had a character quite like her in a long time, where she is very grey to the point where you don't know what her intentions are. She comes to live with Mr. Itti and begin a sort of domestic arrangement. And then you wonder, does she actually like him? Are they actually in love? And then they're not because she is kind of sick of him as well. And he doesn't treat her well as well. So where is the love? What is the point of the relationship? You keep wondering throughout the film. And in the end, you kind of find out. With the climax, you kind of find out why she was there all along and why she put up with all of the menace and all of the nonsense that, Itti's character was putting her through. Now, I really enjoyed this film. I really feel like this was maybe the best film I've seen this year. Just minus the fact that maybe it's 20 minutes too long because they've stretched the rubber totem scenes. There's multiple long shots of, Nunya walking through his rubber wetter occupation. There are long shots of this house that we see, this house of, domesticity, of darkness. And there are like pan shots of the house just existing in the middle of this rubber totem. If you cut some of those out, maybe the film could have been a little tighter. Apart from that, I genuinely thought this was one of the finest films. The music, the camera, the acting performances, the editing, all of it comes together to make a very believable tale of the masculine and the feminine in a domestic space. You see the lengths of what people can go to survive, to kind of get to their end goals. Now, even if it's 80 saying he wants to do XYZ things, whether it's to acquire women, to acquire alcohol, to acquire, marijuana, he keeps doing these very manipulative things to meet his end, even though it is extremely sadist, and I think he really enjoys the sadism. And then on the other half, you have, Nunez's character, who's trying very hard to survive, to be a good man, to not be like his father, and to break the generational trauma and not pass it on to his son. It's a very poignant story, and it's a story that I think, as a generation, we are all addressing it now. We're all trying very hard to not be the kind of people that we were born from, and that idea of not passing on generational trauma or not passing on generational guilt or abuse or regressive thoughts. All of these things are kind of part of our general conversation these days. So this movie really is in place, in the middle of the conversation. It really cruxes all of these things together in a tight, in a tight film. And yeah, I don't think, any other movie in Kerala so far has addressed this level of vile masculinity. What I thought about was maybe several of, let's say, Tilagan's characters, or, some of our older patriarchs that kind of embodied this sort of evilness. But Alencier does it with so much dirt. There is absolute dirt around him. And that really pushes forward. Nobody wants to be like him. You do not want to be like him. There is no point where you think, oh, what a cool guy. That does not happen, which I think is very important. And I think this film needs to be watched by as many people as possible. We're also doing this review because it was part of a poll that we had taken, and a lot of people wanted us to be reviewing this film. And it is an important film to have existed in 2022. So kudos to everybody who worked on it. The co-writer, Jayakumar, everybody has really come together to tell a very important story. And I personally was very happy to see it in Malayalam, in our language, to be talking about these things. So yeah, please watch this film. I really recommend it. It's on SonyLiv. And, I hope we can keep this conversation going. And I will be back next week with another film. Thank you.